The squat is a great exercise. You know, you can hit the basically the whole lower leg, but in particular the quad, just muscles of the front of the leg or the front of the thigh, the hamstrings, which is muscles of the back of the leg, the back of the thigh, and the glutes, and the lower back. The lower back is kind of more in a stabilizing function because you're trying to hold yourself into place as you do the squat or the barbell squat, as we're going to talk about today. Okay, but first, let's get a few things in line, the basics of actual squatting before we get into this barbell. Okay, one of the most important things with this is that you find your stance, okay? You're gonna hear a lot of people say that everyone is different. Now, they'll say that everyone is different, but they'll have everyone squat the exact same way. And I think that's somewhat irresponsible. When you say that everyone's different, you know, as a fitness professional, you should be trying to find out how everyone can be different and change things to match how they're different, not outside of personality. Now, personality you might not be able to account for, but as I'm going to get into differences in the hip structure, you can account for that. Okay, so as I'm talking about hip structure, the reason why you find your stance is all of our hips and the ways that our upper legs and femurs attaches into the hips. You know, they all do so in different angles, and the hips are different sizes and things like that. So what I try to do with my clients is we try to find out which way that they can squat that will produce the least wear and tear on the body. So I run a couple of tests. Okay, so one test is going to be from the knees. I'm going to be on my hands and knees, right? And I'll try a position with my knees inside of my shoulder width. Okay, so, and then I'm going to lower myself down kind of like I would as a squat. But what I'm looking for is I'm going to look at the lower back. And I look at the lower back, the spine in particular, and I see if it starts to lose its natural curve and flatten or round out. Okay? If it flattens and rounds out, that's not the stance for you, because when you try to squat in that stance, which I made the mistake of doing to get better quad development, that's going to produce more wear and tear on your spine, okay, because your spine's going to open up. In this case, there's no weight. When you squat, there's weight and it's loaded onto your spine. So think about that. So I would not recommend that stance for you if your spine flattens out. If it stays normal neutral, you're okay. Okay, that's probably the distance that your feet should be apart. That's good for you to squat in. All right. Then I would also try it wider. Okay, and I would note again how far this person could get into the squatting position, or let's see how deep of let's say a deep of a flexion that you can get without the spine rounding out or flattening. Okay, so with me, wider stances are better. Okay, because my spine doesn't flatten out to what would be the equivalent. I can get beneath with my thighs lower than parallel to the floor without my spine flattening out. Okay, now the next thing is I check for external rotation, internal rotation. So okay, so let's look at the leg. Okay, so as we look at the leg, external rotation will be the leg rotating out. Okay, so the lower leg is going to look like it's going to come in. All right, external rotation, internal rotation. So notice with internal rotation, that foot comes out. So as you can see, as I'm doing this test, I get much more external rotation than I get internal rotation. Okay, so that's saying that my toes should be pointing out when I squat, and that'll give me a little bit more room in my hips to achieve a deeper squat. All right, so that's something that you should think of. You could run this test, or if you have a problem, shoot me a message. Maybe maybe you can show me a video of you performing the test, and I can give you some feedback. All right. So you want to get your stance. That's important because that's the way that your body is made to get into these positions. So if you can get into these positions, you know, when you squat with weight, you're going to be causing less wear and tear on your body. This is why finding your stance is so important. After we find our stance, those other things before we actually get into doing the squat is we want to tighten our core, okay? So what winds up happening, let me get up a little bit here, is a lot of people will squat and we'll have this sort of deal where the rib cage is up because we're trying to focus everything on staying up. So we're trying to keep the rib cage up, but then what's happening here? We got extra arc in the back, which is not good. You know, our body is, you know, that produces more forces on the spine when we have too big of an arc, okay, in the lumbar spine. You can have a small one. I mean, you can have your natural normal one, and that's great, but you can go excessive, you know. All right, so what I would do is then I would tighten the core, boom, hold that down, and keep that neutral, okay? So what that does is a lot of us, because we sit too much, okay, and because we sit too much, we have an anterior rotated pelvis. We basically, if this is the top of my pelvis, and I'm facing this way, okay? I'm facing this way, top of my pelvis. What that means is our pelvis, due to tight hip flexors and the rectus femoris, is tilted forward. So when that pelvis tilts forward, our spine also shifts a little forward, okay? That's gonna limit the amount of flexibility that we have in our hips and our ability to get into a deep squat without either leaning forward, which is gonna make our body, which we're doing barbell squats, so that's going to make our backs work a little bit harder, even though you can try to counter that by lowering the bar, but a lot of people, like I don't have the flexibility to do a low bar squat right now, or the mobility to do a low bar squat because I can't reach behind me. As I say that, okay, it's going to put more wear and tear on your back if you got to lean forward more, because the more that you got to lean forward, now that weight is further from your spine and your back muscles have to work harder to hold the same spot. Okay, so think about that. All right, so if you can stay more upright, you can produce less wear and tear on your low back, all right? And your low back does not have to work as hard to achieve a deep squat.